And then we also have had a discussion of cumulative effect. And one house gets a variance, another house gets a variance, and pretty soon you get a whole bunch of houses with variances, and you end up with a rather large difficulty where it's, in this case, where's the water going to go?
I mean, I think in a nutshell, kind of you just described Jamestown Shores. I mean, that is Jamestown Shores. It's the land of variances.
Shores that we had the problem before. It was in a different area of Jamestown Shores, but it was a similar problem. It was a small lot. Yeah, in that case, I think it wasn't necessarily a house that we were looking at, but it was where was a septic system.
I mean, I think if you took an overview of every application to build in the Jamestown Shores, you'd be hard pressed to find one that doesn't need a variance for some form.
Today there's a lot because of the 203 rate.
Because of that,
the other thing to remember is that since this last letter, which is the last one I could find, which was April 23rd, 1991, since that time, we have the high groundwater ordinance, which wasn't in place then. We have the Water Resource Protection Committee, which is buying these lots. We have a recognition that there are problems up there. We have the Beager study up there, which showed there were problems with some of the areas. So all that happened after a lot of this happened. So I think the town is much wiser now about the potential for impacts. Right. Our ordinance was more strict, and we got that through because we were able to show that it was very important that we put in 150 versus a 50% back. DEM agreed with us, but they could not change their ordinance. They couldn't change the regulation to go to 150. They couldn't get it through the legislature, although they tried.
And then my next point is also that we also have some documentation from meetings in the not too distant past where we said that we would like to hold now to the ordinances that we have and reduce this cumulative effect of continuing to allow variance after variance after variance. So I mean, if we can go back and find that meeting where we created those letters or those statements, we can say that, you know, this is something that we've decided that we're going to continue to hold.
That is in our comp plan too. I think there's a part of the comp plan that was requested that we try to hold the ordinance more strictly, especially in the Shores area. Carol?
Well, so for the purposes of this, I mean, we're here to discuss this proposed development on this lot based on this set of circumstances, which, I mean, at this point we seem to pretty much agree that, yeah, it looks like, you know, the plan represents what's out there. It looks like the wetland edges are not, you know, they seem very reasonable. We all know what we're thinking about now. It's a well-taken point. We also, and what we need for this letter is to say what we think of this particular development in this place. Okay. Noting that cumulative impact is something we've discussed before, and certainly a well-documented concern for the neighborhood.
And the standard here is basically that our town ordinance is 150 feet.
Well, right now, we're just commenting on
right? Understand that right now, the only thing we're commenting on is the DEM's wetland alteration.
So at this point, I mean,
it will come back to us again.
The things we can say about this, are you responsible for the design? Did you design? Well, you did about the best you could possibly do with what you had to work with, is what it comes down to. I mean, you've got everything as far away from, you know, as close to what it needs to do as possible, but I'm not sure that makes it good enough. You still have the entire development is within the 50-foot perimeter wetland, with the exception of the sand filter, right? The sand filter's outside of the wetland. So the house and the well are both entirely within the 50-foot perimeter wetland and the 100-foot riverbank wetland. The sand filter is outside of that, which is important. I mean, that's a whole lot to build a 3-bedroom house within a perimeter wetland.
The other thing that we've asked for in the past, I mean, I have a sense of what people feel, but one of the things that we have done with applicants is we've asked them to work on the project. Taking issue and taking people's property rights is defined as denying all reasonable use, something like that, right? And a 3-bedroom house doesn't necessarily have to be reasonable use. A 1-bedroom can be a shed, can be a picnic ground. The ability to use your property, there are definitions of that. So we have asked people to go back and downsize the house to 1-bedroom. If we don't go with a full, like we really object to the whole thing. In the past, we've tried that route on a couple, not these particular ones, because these were all sitting in the wetland area.
I think the complicated factor here is that downsizing the house still
Still
doesn't get
Doesn't
you
work
out
out,
of the
right.
perimeter wetland. I mean, if
Right.
it was a situation where you're in the perimeter wetland a little and downsizing the house might help you alleviate that, but I mean, you're talking about an entire project existing within a regulated wetland, which just seems like a bad thing to approve.
Okay.
The other thing I think we would want to note is just the topography and the drainage issue that, I mean, this is pretty, it was drier than I expected it to be honest, but the topography is really steep, and where's the water going to go? I mean, you don't have, you know, even any efforts that you make to try and deal with, non-permeable surfaces or whatever, you still have, you can see just here the square footage of the house itself, and then you've got the well and the sand filter. There's not a whole lot.
Just, that leads me up to this. Here's a report that was done in 1976, January 15th. Boy, it's amazing what we have in our files. This was done by the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, done by Anton Mendonca, and it was sent to Bob Sutton. And in the report, on the second page, it says, we highlighted this, so it's okay. Number 3, it says Y'all Avenue, which is up there also. Y'all's the one, where's the road? The paper road behind us. Yeah, it says Y'all and Gondola Streets at the north and end of the Jamestown shores, as shown on drawing 1, these are recommendations, be designated as a drainage easement and eliminated as streets. The area through which these streets pass is low and wet, unsuitable for building, and can better serve as a natural drainage way. That was a recommendation in 1976. Now, we've used that in our letters before, but that never happened. The town never did that. They never abandoned the streets.
The basic statement of facts is as well. It's really a drainage, it has steep sides, and everybody isn't really being contested. It's more, do you have enough space to try to do something with some part of this property or not?
The other issue is when we address this, if we decide we want to recommend that it be denied by DEM, we have to address these functions. And I think we can, it says they're not limited to these, but these are some of the ones, such as, it doesn't mean all of them. It says protection of life and our property from flooding and flood flows. I think, I took some notes earlier, that if we feel strongly about this, that obviously the continued building in the area is going to change the topography of the land a little bit. There is some filling already that's taking place in the property. The flows can't be the same as they used to be.
No.
The drainage can't be the same as it used to be. And there is a possibility for increased flooding from the development along the road. So I think we can answer number 1. Number 2 is providing and maintaining surface and groundwater supplies by acting as recharge or discharge areas. I think you can say
rooftop runoff is proposed to go into dry wells and recharge.
Right.
The driveway is permeable. Outside of that, it's along like anyone else's development. And this 5,000 square feet across the 47-acre watershed that drains to the stream behind it. I mean, I know you cumulative effect is certainly something to think about, but for this particular project, I don't think flooding could be a significant concern based on this particular project. I mean, overall for the town, it may add to a problem that already exists in a negligible way, but
I mean, it's a point well taken. There have been steps taken to try to reduce the environmental surface, and that's worth noting. But you're still,
How many square feet is the house?
something undeveloped.
square feet? 1,000.
Number 3, so groundwater recharge may or may not be impacted. Obviously, there's going to be area that it can't permeate into the water, but if it's discharged into drains, there have been efforts to try to do
mitigate the developed area as a recharge area.
Provide and maintain valuable wildlife habitat. Anytime you fragment habitat, you're degrading wildlife habitat. So you could say that area could be a valuable wildlife habitat. It may or may not be. It may have already been impacted by what's been built there, but you could always say that there was additional impacts from additional development, additional clearing of the property. So.
And you're still in a...
Yeah, and you're still in a regulated wetland. I mean, we can't get away from the fact that